Can we come to order, please? It's Monday, October 1st, meeting of Western Riverside Council of Governments Executive Committee. I'd like to welcome everyone. I'd like to start the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance to be led by our distinguished colleague and fellow council member from Jurupa Valley, Ms. Laura Roten. So please stand and join me for that.
Please join me as we salute our flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Janice, are we able to open up the voting machine so that folks can register?
It should be populating your screens now, sir. City of Beaumont, please register. City of Calamasa, City of Canyon Lake, City of Norco.
Thank you, Janet. I get those lists up here, but I don't like to call them out publicly. I'm glad that you're willing to do that, so I don't have to look bad or lose any votes.
Unless you just like to sit here and wait and wait.
I know.
Beaumont?
Still waiting on the City of Beaumont.
My fault.
All right. I think 20 is a quorum.
Yes, sir.
More than a quorum. Yay. All right. We have a little side business to do, so I'm going to recess our executive committee meeting so that we can convene our supporting foundation meeting. And I believe, Mr. Devon, you have some exciting news to share with us?
Yes, we do have a revision to item 5A, which is the consent calendar item. You'll see a revised ordinance in your package at your desk. We've struck out one of the recitals. We just deemed it was unnecessary and potentially confusing. So we struck out one of the one of the resolutions. Other than that, it's exactly the same. So we're going to ask the board, when they get to the consent calendar, to approve that resolution as before you on the dais with that particular resolution removed.
Okay. All right. Well, that's easy enough.
But Mr. Chair, if I may, there's minutes from the last meeting to approve prior to the resolution, sir.
Yeah, where this is placed on my agenda to convene the supporting foundation is above public comments and minutes. So I'm not there yet unless I...
So, no, there is a separate agenda for the supporting foundation. So the first item on the supporting foundation agenda is call to order and then roll call for the supporting foundation itself.
Okay, so I'm calling to order the foundation meeting.
And then we need a roll call.
Okay. Do we need a separate roll call for that, or can we use what we just did?
Well, I've started the vote for the separate roll call, sir.
Okay, let's do it then.
All members are accounted for, sir.
Okay. Do you have any requests to speak, public comments?
I have no requests.
All right, we'll move on to minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes? Is there anyone who'd like to make changes to the minutes? If not, please register your votes, whether it be yes, no, or abstain. We have 19 votes in the affirmative, no nay votes, no abstentions.
City of Hammond is abstained, sir.
Oh, sorry. We'll move on down to consent calendar. And Steve, was that the one item that you were referencing?
Yes, that's the item with the revised page.
Okay, all right. So under consent calendar, we have one item, 5A, and with the corrections noted by our council, I have a motion by Wildemar and a second by Lake Elsinore. Please register your votes.
Western Municipal Water District. Have you registered to vote, ma'am? Thank you. All are accounted for, sir.
All right. That motion carries 19-0 and one abstention. Steve, can I recess that meeting now and reconvene the executive committee meeting?
I think we can adjourn that meeting.
Adjourn that meeting, I'm sorry. I will adjourn the foundation meeting, reconvene the executive committee meeting, and that brings us down to public comments. I have one request here that was handed to me previously. Is that the only one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Looks like Michael T. Selly. Yes, please.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Executive Committee. My name is Michael Seeley, and I am a third-year political science student at UC Riverside. I'll be interning at the Southern California Association of Governments through Professor Ron Loveridge's political science internship program at the university. I'm here to share two things with you all today from SCAG. First is our sustainability grant. The Southern California Association of Governments is accepting applications for the 2018 Sustainable Communities Program that are due 5 p.m. November 15th, 2018. The goals of the 2018 Sustainable Communities Program include providing needed planning resources for sustainability planning efforts, developing local plans that support the implementation of the 2016 RTP SCS, and increasing the region's competitiveness for federal and state funds. Cities and counties can apply for any of the 9 project types within the following 3 project areas: active transportation, integrated land use, and green region initiative. SCAG will hold an application workshop webinar tomorrow, Tuesday, October 2nd, from 2:30 to 4 p.m. Interested applicants can attend via webinar or in person at SCAG's LA offices. Secondly, I would like to briefly discuss the Future Communities Pilot Program. SCAG has initiated the Future Communities Pilot Program to support city and county agencies in implementing innovative pilot projects that reduce vehicle miles traveled from local travel and municipal operations through the use of new technologies and enhanced data analytics. SCAG, with support of consultants, has completed the initial promising practice research, conducted a regional survey, completed expert interviews, and convened a technical advisory committee to gauge regional readiness for the program and inform the program guidelines. Please note that the call for projects is expected to be released on November 1st of this year, upon approval of the program guidelines by the SCAG Regional Council during the November meeting. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, if there are no other public comments, we'll move on to item 4, minutes. And we are reviewing the minutes of September 10th. And Janice, I do have one question. What's showing up on my screen right now? It looks like it's still the foundation meeting agenda. Not sure how we, I mean, I have it on my laptop, but.
The PowerPoint's not showing up.
So that,
We are now down here.
I know, but the PowerPoint's not showing.
well, but that's, oh, I just got to keep going down. Oh, there's 2 consent calendars. All right,
First consent
okay.
is for the
So it's
Support
been foundation. All right. All right, we have a motion by Moreno Valley and waiting on a second by City of Temecula. Register your votes for the summary minutes from September 10th.
Do you see a total vote, sir?
Yes, 18 yeses, no nays, 2 abstentions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So we'll move on to consent calendar. We have items 5A through 5G. I've had a request. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Sayardo.
Oh, okay. Hey, item A3, I'd like to pull and refer that back to the Admin and Finance Committee because we did not have a quorum for the September meeting, and so therefore we never got to see this. So if we would just take that one item out of this and refer that back to us to look at, and then the rest of it is fine. I would move the consent calendar.
So, Steve, can I just take one vote, one motion and second with the notation that A3 will be continued or pulled?
Yes, we can break out the action items,
I mean, just trying to...
as you suggested.
Okay, so the first part of item 5A vote will be on requested actions numbers 1, 2,
Everything but 3.
everything but 3.
And then we'd have to do something separate for
And then
3.
we should take a separate action on item 3.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we are voting now on consent 5A as an action item, A1 through A7, and then we have pulled 3, and we'll take a separate vote on that.
Here we go.
Okay, that motion carries with 19 yes, 0 no's, and 1 abstention.
And just for clarification, Mr. Chair, the water districts do not vote on TUMF items.
Okay,
So Eastern Municipal Water District will show as abstained.
okay, got it. Now we'll deal with, Mr. Sayardo, do you want to make a motion to continue item A3 off calendar?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to continue that item off calendar and refer it back to the Admin Finance.
All right, well, we actually have a motion by City of Hemet and a second by City of Temecula. Register your votes.
Fast enough.
And we're waiting on, okay. That motion carries 20 yeses, no no's, no abstentions. We'll move on to the balance of the consent calendar items. Let's see, 5B through 5G. Is there any other requested items to be pulled? Can I get a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar? And a second, please. Somebody. All right, we have a motion by Wildemar, a second by Murrieta. Waiting on Temecula to join the party. All right. I didn't get a vote tally on that. I'm assuming it was
20 yes, 0 no's, 0 abstain, and 5 no votes. Those are the absent members.
okay. Great. There it is. We'll move on down to reports and discussions, item 6A. And Mr. Gray, do you want to give your staff report before I call up public comments? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Gray, Director of Transportation and Planning for WRCOG. I'm here today to talk about a proposed change to the process by which TUMF is calculated, collected, and reported by your individual cities. So since the inception of the program, it's been a fairly, in theory, should be a very straightforward process. A developer comes into the agency, they say, I have 50 homes, I have 10,000 square feet of commercial. The city calculates the fee based on direction we give them. Agencies remit the funds, and then we have a retroactive review process. Sometimes that occurs within months. Sometimes it's about a year later, and then sometimes it's very many years later when we discover significant errors. So I wanted to, and we've presented this chart before, but I want to give you an idea of what we call the TUMF shuffle. And so what in reality is happening is developers coming into the member agency oftentimes has a question or clarification, they contact us, we go back to the member agency and say, okay, this is how the fee should be paid. They go back to the developer says, well, I don't really believe you, can you go back and ask a question? That's round 3, round 4. We go back to member agency and say, no, this is really what we meant. They go back to the developer, then sometimes the developer just bypasses directly, comes to us, and then we have to go back and tell the city and the developer how the fee should be calculated. The problem with the process is that we're penalizing people for what we would consider to be honest mistakes and misunderstandings. It creates uncertainty in the process. It results in TUMF undercharging and overcharging, and it creates a labor-intensive process for WRCOG and the local agencies. So I'm sure you want to know who's making mistakes. The answer is everybody. Every agency at one point or another has made a mistake, either undercollected, overcollected the TUMF. So let me tell you how easy it is to make a $100,000 mistake. On one of our member agencies, there was a staff person doing fees. They went to a drop-down menu and they clicked the wrong box. Nobody found it. 6 months later, we found it, and that was a $100,000 mistake, and the city had to then go back to the developer and say, this was a mistake, we need to fix it. We attended a meeting with the developer where they pulled out our administrative plan that said, hey, if you make a mistake, it's actually your fault, not ours. And so we identified this problem in February. The fee was collected last year, and we're still having ongoing discussions with the city and the developer on how to fix it. So we've also heard from some people like, oh, these are only residential or non-residential. No, all types of projects, little projects, big projects, little agencies, small agencies, everyone's made mistakes. The issue is that we've started to track the number and severity of mistakes, and they seem to be getting worse. And again, it's not limited to one agency, it's everyone makes mistakes. And we've been also looking for, since I'm a big nerd, is there a consistent pattern or an explanation? Is there one calculation that seems to be causing an issue and that doesn't seem to be the problem? So what we've been looking for is a process that will reduce the errors, reduce the staff time, and reduce your jurisdictional liability, and I'm going to tell you what we've come up with. We spent a lot of time talking about internally what are the options. We could simply require that everyone submits their calculations to us. We could change the process by which we review the calculations. So we engaged in a series of discussions with our planning directors, our public works directors, our city managers, our members of our TAC. We had a previous briefing for the executive committee. We've met with individual agencies. And the process that we're bringing forward today has unanimous support from our public works directors, our planning directors, and the TAC. So what we're proposing is an optional process by which your agency can choose to delegate that WRCOG will collect the TUMF fee, calculate and collect the TUMF fee on your behalf. You may say, well, can we do this? I would say yes, and the reason why is we have had our legal counsel do a thorough review of AB 1600, the TUMF ordinance, and what they have told us is, yes, we can do this, but only for those agencies who are willing to take an amendment to their TUMF ordinance. And one of the reasons why we're creating an optional process is we don't want to make all of you amend your TUMF ordinance if you choose not to. I would also point out that we've looked at other agencies around the state, and Fresno COG has a TUMF program which is actually based on ours, so they copied ours. And what they did, which is really interesting, is from the beginning, that COG has always collected the fee. So this model of you all collecting the fee doesn't seem to be working. We can do it, and so I want to talk a little bit more about the process. And so again, what we're crafting is an optional process. Your agency, each of your agencies individually, can decide to either delegate that to WRCOG, which is option 2, or keep the process you have now. If you feel uncomfortable doing that, or your staff feels that they have it under control, or your staff feels that it's appropriate for them to do this, you're going to have the ability to do that. If we calculate and collect the TUMF, the process we've come up with is agencies can electronically submit TUMF calculations. We've created a series of forms, websites, other reference materials to simplify the process. We provide a response in 24 hours. We can do all that electronically. Why? We do it electronically right now. My staff and I spend a lot of time answering emails from people on TUMF fee issues. We calculate the fee. We can collect the fee from the developer. I just wanted to add that our current processes through our various programs, we've already set up to collect electronic payments. Almost all of our agencies pay their TUMF electronically, so it doesn't change our accounting procedures significantly. We're going to be able to collect the fees electronically. If someone wants to pay it in person, we can set that process up as well. But once the fee is paid, we'll simply notify the agency this project has paid their fee. I want to be really clear, we're not trying to overstep your land use authority, and then we have 100% of the responsibility for the errors. So we make a mistake, the mistake's on us, the mistake's not on you. So here's a flow chart on how the process works, how the process would work under option 2. But maybe your agency feels comfortable with the existing process. If that's the case, it's still essentially business as usual. You'll calculate the fee, collect the fee, send the fee to us on a monthly basis. However, we're putting in place several procedures to try to catch the errors more quickly. That means doing more real-time review of the fees as they're being calculated. That seems to help. And then also we've put together a TUMF fee calculator website that if you want to know what TUMF fees are, you can calculate them yourself or have your staff. So under option 2, this is essentially the process that we're going to be following. It is more involved for the agencies. However, we are leaving it up to you and your staff to determine your appropriate course of action. So the proposed implementation plan is we're asking you today to take action on this approved process. It will also be updating the TUMF administrative plan and the TUMF ordinance. We have set aside 30 days for agencies to follow up with us. If there's no change, then simply no action is necessary. If your agency is going to opt in the process, we simply ask that you let us know within 30 days. We'll work with those agencies that want to opt in on the process, which means moving through the TUMF ordinance, amendment, adoption of that at the local level, and then we anticipate about April 1st, the process will kick in. Again, if you're not going to move forward in this direction and keep the current process, then we'll work with your staff as we currently do. So next steps, as I said, is we're going to follow up with each of the members of the TAC, ask them for their direction. We simply want you to tell us what you're going to do within a set period of time. We have gotten some questions about how we do that. Does that require board action? Does that require, we're going to leave it up to you. We believe each of your agencies knows how best to process that through. There's no requirement, there's board action until the adopted ordinance is acted on. And then those that wish to proceed in this way will give you an updated ordinance and work with your staff and to agendize that for adoption by your council. So we put together some frequently asked questions to just be really clear about this. One of the questions we get is, well, what if we want to keep the current process? You're allowed. We simply will be working with you to try to minimize the errors and issues we have with TUMF. How would this change the annual reporting requirements? Many of you may not be aware of this, but we ask each of your cities on a yearly basis to report all their TUMF collections. If we're doing the fee collection, it greatly simplifies this or reduces that. All we will be asking your agencies to do is verify, for example, total number of building permits, not individual permits. So if you've issued 2,000 building permits, we just want to make sure that we have TUMF calculations for all of those. And I can tell you from talking to your staff, that's a significant reduction in their workload. Would we charge an additional processing fee? Some folks have asked us this. The answer is no. We take 4% of the TUMF right now for administrative costs. Historically, we've spent about 3%. One of the questions we get is, isn't this going to take a lot more staff time? I can tell you it doesn't appear to be so, and the reason why is we spend so much time going back and forth with agencies and developers on these calculations. If we're doing the calculations right the first time, that's a huge cost savings for our time. And I would also say that we see this as a cost savings for your staff. I work with your staff on a daily basis, and I don't know any of them that have all this free extra time to do extra things. They're being asked to do a lot, and so for them, we see this as a cost savings for them. You know, this is one of the things you may hear is that we're going to slow down the process, or you feel that, you know, WRCOG may use slow down TUMF calculations if there's a project we don't, let's say, we're in favor of. Part of the admin plan change is we now have a appeals process for developers can directly come to WRCOG staff and the WRCOG committee. If we're holding up a project, there's a way for them to appeal it now. It's actually far more expedited than the current process. And we've also had instances where there is a TUMF dispute and there's a process for developers to pay their fees or to move the process forward, so we don't see this holding up any projects. This issue of delaying projects is one that's come up. We would say that it doesn't appear to delay the process. And then what I would add too is, think about this in your personal life. Would you rather, so if you went to buy a car, and what's happening now is the equivalent of me as the car dealer coming back to you and go, oh yeah, you know, you overpaid. Here's a check for $2,000. Would you rather have it done right the first time? So that's what's happening, is that we've issued, over the past 3 years, between $2 and $3 million of TUMF refunds a year, where projects have overpaid their TUMF, and then oftentimes they're coming to the jurisdiction and say, hey, you overcharged us, or we shouldn't have paid TUMF, and then the fees have to be refunded. So in our mind, that is a significant cost savings in and of itself, so you don't have to chase people down to get your fees back. So the question is, what are we doing to help move this process forward? As I said, we have an online fee calculator that will be on our website that will calculate your TUMF fees for you. We distributed this to the planning directors and public works directors. This is something that fee estimates. The other thing that does, we spend a lot of staff time answering TUMF questions. Someone will come in and go, hey, I'm building a shopping center, what's my TUMF fee? Now you have to call us to try to calculate it yourselves. With an online tool, you'll be able to do it yourself. So here's a screenshot of our fee estimator. It's a simple fillable form. You fill it out, and then in this particular instance, it was, I believe, 15 single-family dwelling units, and the fee calculates to $133,095. So, Mr. Chairman, the requested actions is we are asking you to adopt a change to the TUMF administrative plan, direct staff to prepare an amendment to the TUMF ordinance, direct staff to consult with member agencies to formally determine those that wish to enroll in the process, direct staff to work with legislative bodies, direct staff to allow those agencies who do not wish to enroll in the process to continue calculating and collecting TUMF, direct staff to contact all member agencies to verify their enrollment status on an annual basis. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure there may be questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm sure that there will be, but of course, if there's at least one agency that would like you to collect the TUMF,
Yes.
then we would need to adopt this.
Correct.
Because without this, you can't do it for anyone.
Correct.
So just by a show of hands, is there anyone that might be interested in letting WRCOG? Okay, so we'll go that route.
Yes.
And are there, before I call up the public speaker, is there questions for Mr. Gray? And I caution you, if you ask him a question, it's going to be a very thorough answer, right, Chris?
Yes, my daughter once brought home a book called If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, and then 17 things follow from giving a mouse a cookie. So if you ask me a question, I'll give you a very extensive answer.
All right. Thank you. We'll call you back up. Mr.
It's a great question, fact sheet.
Mr. David Daslick would like to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the Executive Committee, and thank you to WRCOG staff. Earlier, I submitted a letter on behalf of our association regarding this proposed change in the TUMF policy. But first, I would like to thank WRCOG staff for their partnership. As we've worked through TUMF issues before, throughout 2017, we worked with WRCOG staff, and I think we found an amenable phase into that fee. The TUMF has been an issue that the building industry has worked very closely with WRCOG on, and when it does come to this collection of the TUMF, we do have a concern that this would potentially add another layer of bureaucracy, that it is another check in a box that a developer is required to get in an already very long list as they go through the approval process to build within this county. As you know, California is currently in a housing crisis, and we are currently building only 80,000 of the 180,000 units per year required to meet the growing demand. So when we see these additional layers that developers and builders may be required to address, we're of course always concerned with the potential for additional bureaucracy, the potential for additional costs, and the potential for slowdowns. However, it is not addressed in the letter. I would like to state, I did speak with Rick Bishop before this, and he did assure me that the goal of this is to make things more efficient and more cost effective. That is our goal as well, as a laudable goal, and that's where we would all like to get. Our concern, however, is that in any process where you add additional steps, there are additional potential difficulties, additional potential costs, and potentially additional time that any project would have to look at.
Can I interject a question? I paused your time because maybe I don't understand what's being proposed, but it seemed to me Mr. Gray was defining a process that would actually replace one step with another step, not add a step. In other words, the developer would go straight to WRCOG versus going to the city, who then goes to WRCOG. I'm not following how that's an additional level of bureaucracy.
The concern from some of our membership is that in the process of getting their approvals, paying their city level fees, they also pay the TUMF at the same time, and that this adds an additional separate entity that they must remit that payment to.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming in. All right, I think I had someone in the queue here. Looks like Norco would like to speak.
Yeah, I just had a question. So we had an issue where one of the businesses didn't fit a box, and they were quoted like $80,000, and then once we got involved in it, we found out it dropped significantly to, like, you may know the issue was a school. And how will, if we go with you guys doing it, how will we be able to make sure that doesn't happen? Because not everything's going to fit the box.
Correct. So one of the advantages of having us deal with these issues is we oftentimes... The timer's been turned off. So
sorry.
I only have 3 minutes to answer this question, so...
I didn't do that.
Yeah, I wanted to hear about the mouse again, but I figured they shut you off.
What we have found is when we get the same question over and over again, we are really good at answering that question. So I'll give you an example. About 3 years ago, when I started, a developer in Murrieta asked if they needed to pay TUMF for clubhouses that are built within single-family dwelling units, complexes, and we said no, because they generally don't tend to generate a lot of trips in and of themselves. So every time that comes up, we know the answer to that. So what happens is that we have, Daniel and Jessica, even Rick and myself, have developed a substantial body of expertise in the area, and we're not reinventing the wheel. So oftentimes, there's very few issues that are unique, but we're able to discuss it and get back to them. And I'll give you another example. We were asked about a flight school at Flabob Airport in Yarupa Valley, and Daniel and I sat down, looked at all the information, and in about 15 minutes came up with an answer, which is it's part of the airport, and we've changed the administrative plan, so activities at airports are considered to be part of the airport, and they're exempt from TUMF. So by having this recurring database and expertise. We're able to get to these questions very easily. And so it's not the developer asking the city asking us telling the city, and then them telling us. So by having direct communication with the developer, which the city is also copied on, that gets us to a more efficient resolution.
Okay. And then my other question is 30 days, that would give us, we couldn't agendize it for Wednesday, that would give us one meeting to agendize this within the 30 days. And are you going to reach out to our city managers, or how can we facilitate that so that it can be agendized for the one meeting we'll have to look at this?
We're not even asking you to agendize it. We're simply asking you to say, hey, we would like to move this forward.
But I can't do that.
Right. So in our mind, all that would be is either a letter from your city manager. We recognize that some of you may, for example, want to take this to your council for discussion. We would ask that getting the process started as we envision it would simply be a letter or an email from your city manager to myself or Rick saying, hey, we would be interested in this. Can you give us more information, or can you work with us to move this forward? That's all we're asking for. We're not asking you to take the final definitive action. We simply just want you to, it's almost like a letter of, I don't know, letter of commitment would be the right word, but we are sensitive to every city has its own decision-making process, or every agency has its own decision-making process, and we're happy to work with you, but we just want to know some of you may not be interested at all. So just tell us one way or another, and so I think just a letter or an email from your city manager would be sufficient.
Well, I'll have my city manager reach out, because I'm not certain yet. I've got 4 other people I have to bring this back to, so thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, thank you. Murrieta's in the queue.
Yeah, Chris. So we were talking about the extra step that the BIA was talking about when the chairman said it's actually replacing a step with a step. I'm kind of looking at what you're trying to do as taking that one step and making sure that there are no more extra steps after that by making sure we get it right the first time, which to me kind of falls into the category of making it a better process and a more certain process. And that's one of the things that I hear from the development industry that you guys want is certainty. You don't want to keep coming back and being told a different thing every time you come to the counter. So would that characterization of that extra step be correct, or am I going off on my own thing?
No, that would be correct, and if you'd like to maybe answer some of the other questions, that's exactly right. So, but my perspective is that we want to make sure we get it right the first time, we get it right as quickly as possible, but as you said, we give people the right answer, because I think that's very important, and we not create this feedback loop where the developers and the city are going back and forth and having this extended discussion. To me, that is a huge cost savings for the development community, for your staff, and I think it's also far more fair, so it's fair and consistent. But yes, to answer your question, I think it is taking a process and making sure we're doing it right.
All right. Looks like Supervisor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to extend my appreciation to the WRCOG staff for making this optional. As it was rolling to this commission, it wasn't. It was going to be mandatory for all cities in the county to join, and needless to say, we had some concerns with a COG mandating to its member agencies what it's going to do, so do appreciate that. My understanding is it's all going to be electronic. And so if an agency doesn't opt in, if it's electronic, they can still utilize the same formula, formatting software?
Yes, they're absolutely welcome, and they are welcome to use all the same tools, all the same processes that we're making available to everyone. So we have a meeting with the county staff tomorrow to go through some of our tools and show them how to use those. And then talk how we can better integrate their process to really, because really we're trying to simplify this for all of your staff. I said they have plenty of other things to do. So yes, everyone, the tools, information will all be available to everyone, whether they opt in or not.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Jeffries. It seems to me, Chris, Supervisor Jeffrey's comments notwithstanding, that you've kind of struck a good balance between giving people an opportunity to select going through WRCOG or continuing to do it on their own. They like that freedom.
Yes.
And I think probably an argument could be made that if you pointed out every agency has been noticed to have made mistakes, the mistakes cost developers time, which translates to money. So if there's a savings in time because of new efficiencies, maybe it's a better process, but each agency can decide on their own how they want to go.
Yes.
Okay.
And I also want to say this is not a one-time process. We will be talking to each of your staff on a yearly basis. If you choose not to enroll now, you want to opt in next year, we will facilitate that. So this is not the...
Or vice versa.
Correct, that's
They
perfectly correct.
opt in and turn
Yes.
it, they don't like it, they can opt out later.
Sounds like a win-win.
Right here, she said it all. Sounds like a win-win.
That's right.
But I don't think we have enough wins in there, like a win, 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 win. So, Calamasa.
Yeah, Chris, you said that the 4% is for the administrative part of WRCOG to administer this program, right?
That's correct.
And you said it's only costing you 3%?
Historically, we've spent about 3% for the program. If you go back from the beginning of the program, we have spent historically 3% or a little bit over that now to administer the program. So we're confident we can provide this service within that 4%.
So why isn't that changed to 3% now? I mean, why are we making a profit on that?
Well, we're not making a profit. What we are doing is, for example, historically we've spent 3% because that's how the program was set up, but actually over the more recent years, between some of the legal costs we've incurred as well as the cost of doing some of the technical studies, it comes closer to 4%. But just over, since the inception of the program, it's been about 3%.
But if somebody's going to come in and pay $10,000 per building unit in my city, we've got the manpower to go ahead and figure that out real quickly. And I actually like cutting a check to you guys. What I don't want to see is when a developer comes back and says, hey, there's been some holdup, we can't get, our COs because we've gone over and talked to, I want to be responsible for screwing up their project. I don't want to put it on some other agency that's one more layer insulated from that developer, and that's what really troubles me about this.
Well, and that's why, as we had discussed at an earlier time of making this mandatory, and based on the feedback from some of our agencies, we felt that that was not something they wanted to move forward on. And so that's why it's optional. Some may opt in, some may not. And some of you may want to go back and have a discussion with your city manager to see which option you want to use. Some of you may want to agendize this to your council. Some of you may not.
Chris, since we're not really prepared with this particular agenda item, because I picked up on the same thing, the 4%, 3%, you probably shouldn't have brought that up. But we can talk about that later. Maybe we can, at a future point, we can revisit that issue, maybe when we start looking at our budget again.
Yes.
If I agree with the mayor that if we're overcharging, we don't need to be doing that.
Correct.
So how about if we bring that back for further discussion?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
All right.
Do that.
Murrieta.
Well, since we're talking about that, I want to kind of clarify. 4%, because I remember when this thing started, was just the amount that we figured out of the money collected that we would be spending on administrative costs. So all these years that we've only spent 3%, seems we've been pretty frugal in making sure that, we're staying under that 4%. Is that correct, Mr. Bishop?
Yeah, that's correct. So The ordinance allows for up to 4%, and that's a combination of staff time and consulting costs, and the amount fluctuates from year to year, especially in years where we have a Nexus study update. So when you have a Nexus study update, you're more heavy in the consultant side of it.
But that's the entire TUMF.
But that's the entire TUMF program, and so we use what we use, and as we've demonstrated, the what's been collected and utilized for the total staff and consultants has been around 3% or less in a given year, and so.
So we're beating the amount that we projected.
We use what we use, and the dollars, the 4% is just a cap. It's not money that's just set aside. So after we've established a reserve for TUMF, we use what we use, and then monies that 4% that aren't collected just go right back in the program.
They go back into the program to be spent on roads.
Correct.
It's not held somewhere, and we're not charging people more than they would have paid before. Correct?
Kelly Ciardo slush fund?
I ain't got no slush fund. I wish I did. Okay, so I'm not quite sure how that is kind of relevant to this. In Murrieta's case, I've talked to our staff extensively, and they're all on board to allow WRCOG to take because we're trying to streamline stuff. We've been struggling with this process and these delays, and because we've been told time and time again that time is money. And when there's a delay in the process while we go back and forth with an agency, why don't you just get rid of the middleman and be able to streamline that process a little bit? So everybody talks about the streamlining, and then when we have an opportunity to do it, everybody says, oh, no, wait a minute. So the people that don't want to do it, I think that's great. The people that do, I think we would like to get this thing going. So I'm going to make a motion that we do that.
Please do. So I was waiting for a motion. And again, if you need for me to reread the proposed new TUMF calculation policy, if not, I won't bore you with that.
I don't think you should.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Everybody understands what we're voting on. This gives you the option to choose the program the way it is or the way Chris is offering, and there's going to be an electronic option also to calculate your fee. That motion carries with 18 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 2 abstentions. We have no report from the Technical Advisory Committee Chair, so I'll move down to SCAG, AQMD, and CalCog reports, starting with SCAG, Regional Council, and Policy Committee representatives. Are there any reports to be given representing any SCAG business? None? And Mr. Benoit?
Just a quick update. We haven't had our AQMD board meeting this month yet, but we did have a meeting for the refinery committee. I spent a couple Saturdays ago, all day Saturday, hearing from both sides of the refinery debate. And what this is coming back to is there's a particular chemical at two of the 5 refineries that is a very toxic chemical. If it were to get loose, it could be very damaging and frankly very deadly. But this is not a chemical that's normally being emitted to the atmosphere. So my stance, and please if anyone at this area would like to challenge or tell me otherwise, it's not something that's normally going into the air. It's not something we're really supposed to be regulating. But we've been asked to regulate it. We're looking at that, and frankly, it's going to be one of these interesting split decisions as it comes closer to the board. So we'll see where this goes. Just when you read the LA Times, it says something about AQMD trying to raise gas prices by 50, 60, 70 cents. Potentially.
Then we should come to you?
Well, just know that I'm not the one trying to do that.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ben. Mr. Tisdale, CalCog? Nothing to report. All right, we'll move on to Executive Director's report. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to report at this time.
Oh, you guys are easy on me today. Items for future agendas. Anyone without discussing in detail, or we could just ask Mr. DeBon to leave the room. Without kidding, that's lawyer humor. Anyone like to add an item for future agendas? Okay, nothing. General announcements. Anyone have any general announcements? Birthday wishes, anything? Nothing. We have one closed session item showing on the agenda. Mr. DeBond, would you like us to relocate down to the audience seats, and will there be any reportable action?
I do not expect any reportable action, and we would like to have the members relocate to the
Okay, so we'll relocate down to the audience seats, and our next meeting will be Monday, November 5th. After closed session, we will be adjourned.